Welcome back. My name is Dan Coonan. I'm the Commissioner and CEO of the ECAC. This is our fourth Empowerment Series event. We're coming to you from Caldwell University. And today, this is our last session of the day, and we're talking about getting an esports program, an intercollegiate esports program up and running and competitive, and doing all that quickly. And we got a great panel here. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves real quickly, but we're appreciate the 11 Sports for doing this for us. It is on 11 Next, and it'll be replayed, and we'll send out links to it as well. But we appreciate them. They are our streaming partner now. So. Paul, you want to lead off, just a real brief bio and all. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul Raby Santoro. I've been a professional gamer, former professional gamer of 10 years. For the last 5 years, I've been working as a commentator, stage host, MC, interviewer, really any sort of on-air talent. And I have dedicated the last 15 years of my life to the esports industry and its growth.
Thanks for being here.
I'm Danny Harveth from Nerd Street Gamers. We're an esports infrastructure company, which means building esports facilities and events, trying to replicate what exists in traditional sports for esports. So our history and how we got started and what we've built to date mirrors in a lot of ways what colleges are trying to do in terms of providing support, providing infrastructure for collegiate teams and collegiate programs to get up and running and do what these competitors want to do, which is compete.
My name is Dan Marino. I'm the head coach for the esports team at the College of St. Rose in Albany. Prior to this, I was an amateur player, an amateur coach, and then I run my own sort of tournament where we coach players, we coach coaches, broadcasters, writers, and then I also have experience coaching in traditional sports.
My name is Lydia Pfister. I'm actually the director of esports for the ECAC, so I help facilitate and ease the onboarding of schools, reach out to schools. If they're interested, I really help them, be recognized with the ECAC and the esports.
Great. All right. So let's just get right into it. As I've mentioned earlier today, we've gone from 0 to about 25 schools in the course of a year that are ECAC esports members. And right now, we already have another 15 or so that have told us they're in for next year. We think we'll take that maybe to 50 or more. Most of those are starting from scratch. They started last year, they're starting this year, they're starting next year. Dan, you want to talk a little bit about how you go from 0 to 60 and compete with schools that might have scholarships and might have coaches and you name it, might have a ton of funding, sure, might have a great facility. What do you, give us your
Sure.
thoughts on how to go about it.
Well, 9 times out of 10, a school will already have, whether it's an official club or an unofficial club of students that meet and play anyway. So it's usually already there. It's just a matter of recognizing it and developing it. At the College of St. Rose, I believe that they started, seriously considering this in the beginning of the fall semester of 2018, and then, developing it and finalizing what they want to do. They finally committed and then put out the job ad, which I ultimately filled in March. So we're moving pretty quickly, I think, in terms of what most programs have, done prior. So we're working on building an esports arena. We're figuring out how we want to do recruiting, what games we want to implement, the equipment, and things like that. And I think it's really important to, in order to flesh it out, is to consult with the students that are on campus that will be a part of the program, because once again, they're the ones that are already, meeting and already, trying to do this on their own. So they have an idea of sort of what they want. Not everything is feasible, because of budgets and all. But, I really appreciate, at least, the College of St. Rose, what they're doing is that they're going all in on it. Some schools like to do the club team, which is fine, but I think it's really important to the scene for schools to just embrace it, because it is going to be big, it's going to be massive. So getting in now and coming in strong, I think, is really important.
SUNY Canton is one of our ECAC esports schools, and And they will tell you that nothing they've done as a university has had the impact or gotten the publicity that starting their esports program and then having success with esports has gotten them, which is really remarkable when you think about it. But it confirms all the decision and all the effort to get it together. You mentioned arena. Some people might get scared off and think, oh my God, to start esports, do I need to have an arena? Describe that, what you mean by that, and what they need by that if they're just starting.
Sure. So an arena is not necessary. I think it's something that's very nice to have, and I'm very grateful that our school is developing one. But the arena, at least from what my perspective, gives us a home, gives the team a place to be the team. At least having a room for us, it kind of legitimizes the sport and the game and sort of the program being a varsity program. So I really appreciate that. With the school investing in it, it means we're going to have the top of the line equipment so that we don't have to worry about students bringing their own equipment. Maybe that has some faulty hardware or any other issues that could crop up with that. So we're able to create a consistent experience for students, and then we're also able to cater to students that maybe can't afford their own computer, their own console, so we can involve students that otherwise wouldn't be able to participate in esports. And then on top of that, it lets us sort of regulate how we want to do our practices, how we want to do our matches, so it creates more of that varsity feel. But for our arena, we're looking at 24 stations for players, and then we're going to have a coaching station, and then we'll have an additional training area to do sort of like film review and additional strategizing.
And is it a separate building, or is it a piece of a building, or what?
At our school, we had a food establishment that wasn't doing so well in one of the residence halls, and they made the decision that would be the best place for it. So we're taking over what used to be what was called Midnight Eats. It was a late night sort of snack place in the one of the residence halls.
And how big is it?
Oh, I believe it's, gosh, it's not very big. It's definitely not the size of the room we're sitting in here.
Okay.
I'd say it's about half the size if you cut it right down the middle. I don't have the footage.
Right. Okay. And is there? Can you view, or is it mostly just competitor only?
It's mostly just for in-house for practices and matches. We don't have enough room for spectators.
Okay, all right. So, yeah, I just want to make sure that people aren't intimidated when they hear.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a large space at all, just somewhere where you can house, whatever the 5, 6, 7 people that are going to, ultimately make up that roster. A place where they can practice and meet and talk.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so, Nursery Gamers builds and operates esports arenas, and like Dan was saying, this isn't, for the most part, what we imagine with an arena in typical sports with, 10,000 seats or anything like that. First and foremost, it's a home base for the teams, for the varsity teams, to have a place to play, to practice, to compete, and have that equipment that they know is theirs, and have that support from the school. Beyond that, it's really the appetite of the school and what their goals are. So can it have spectator seating and a stage so that you can have a large-scale event, so that you can have intercollegiate competitions? Absolutely. Can it have more PCs and consoles and equipment to facilitate the larger gaming community within the student body and get them involved? Absolutely, right? Can it have a production booth and a streaming booth so that you can get your college up and running with a Twitch channel and have events and programming that is driving that content, which then allows you to integrate with the media department in the school and the sports management departments in the school? Absolutely. But having that start is, that's the first step, and then it's really what as far as each school wants to go.
Right. And what do you think about competition? I mean, but what was that part of it? I mean, how are we going to play? Who are we going to play? All that sort of thing.
For the arena?
No, for your teams. For your
right.
teams.
So for the competition, I think esports is wonderful in that you can realistically play anybody that you want. If we wanted to, for instance, practice or scrim against one of the best teams in California, we could try to make that happen. So we're not limited by geography like you would be in traditional sports. I really like personally what the ECAC is doing with sort of a set conference in esports. Coming from traditional sports, it's something I've always loved. The developing rivalries and sort of those close geographical rivalries. Like I love that we have 3 or 4 schools right in our vicinity that we could have out and have a match in our arena, or we could play online, or we'll meet in hopefully the playoffs. But I think that. With how the internet is and how esports has developed, it's really awesome that, like I said, I could schedule a practice or a match with a team in Nebraska if I really wanted to. I think it's just all about what the goals of your school are and what you're looking for out of the competition.
The students who want to come out and be a part of the school's esports team, they just want to compete, right? They want competitive opportunities, and they want to represent their schools. And so right now there's schools have a lot of opportunity to shape how that happens, whether it's private online matches that they set up on their own with schools, or inviting schools to come and compete at their facility that they build, or a theater on campus and try to draw in their student body to come and spectate it, or finding an ECAC to compete in their conference tournament, or NACE or TESPA. There's a lot of different opportunities to compete, and there's no NCAA that's the be-all, end-all.
Mm-hmm. How did you decide what games to offer?
From our perspective, since we're just starting, we wanted to go with what's the most popular right now as we sort of develop what we want in the program and what works for us and what might not work for us. So we didn't want to, bite off more than we could chew and offer, every game, every title. So we're just doing Overwatch and League of Legends, which are 2 of the top esports currently. And then, going forward as we grow, it'll be based on student interest. So, if an incoming class has, 10 players or 10 students that want to play CSGO, that's of course something we could add. But we felt that starting smaller and just sort of figuring out, how we wanted this to run and sort of, developing the program on our own, we felt that was the better approach.
If you if you want to start an esports program, you have to go with the games and the companies that are focused around making their game 10-year games. That's what you have to do, because if not, the games will change every year, every 6 months. They will evolve, they will adapt, they will keep moving on, and that's when it becomes difficult to really build scenes. Stick to games that are 10-year games, League of Legends, Overwatch, games that are literally telling you that they're not going anywhere for 10 or 20 years, despite popularity or whatever the case is. That way you can really just get a home base going, and then you can branch off from there. But you want to start with those 10-year games, ones that are proven, 100% guaranteed, and also already have the support.
Once you have that esports infrastructure in place, that's the most important part, right? And then you can examine, you can have that understanding of what it takes to get a team up and running, so you can really examine these games on a game-by-game basis and have that criteria that, whether it's this interest from the student body, the support from the publishers, and maybe you have a rule that you only do a game that's been around in a publisher-supported pro league for 3 years. Maybe you look at the number of monthly active users in a particular game. You can develop that criteria, but having that infrastructure, getting that esports program up and running, that's the first step.
To start, you just need to see who wants to play. That's the number one first thing. You put out the flyers, you just see who wants to play, where's the interest here. And then, like you said, and Dan said, most of these collegiate programs are already governing themselves. They're already happening. The best players on campus are already playing together. They already know who the best players are on campus, and it's already there.
And there is interest.
And
I
absolutely.
don't care what campus it is. There is interest if you look for it.
Well, because every generation now is, my generation started, I was born in '89. We really started that level of when the consoles came out, to what Dan said before, is just changed everything, because now people are growing up from the age of 5 to end on into everyone, even adults now, playing games, and that's why we're seeing so much interest now, because people are growing up with this. Before, your mom would sign you up to PALs, softball, or baseball, baseball, whatever the case is, or basketball, and you would have these little, these leagues. Now you could just go home and compete on the online esport league built into the game whenever you want, anytime, any school, anywhere in the world. And every college, like you said, Dan, has people waiting.
Right.
And I think it's important as well to know what your goals are as an esports program. And that comes from leadership, that comes from senior leadership, and having them buy in and having those goals directed to the esports program. If it's to engage the student body and get those teams up and running to compete, that's one step. If it's to win, it's a whole nother one.
Right. Lydia, how many athletic directors are you dealing with? I mean, it's most of this is outside of the athletic department, is it not?
Yeah, so I do deal with athletic directors, but it's mainly through campus recreation directors, club officers that reach out to me.
Yeah. What was your thought, Dan, about where it would be housed, and did a lot go into that? I just know from athletic departments, I see a lot of resistance in athletic departments nationally to getting into this area. The flip side of that is so many of the things that you'll need to be successful: media relations team, sponsorship, folks to do sponsorships, event management, facility, eligibility, and rules issues. All of that, there's already infrastructure in the athletic department to do, and all the social media accounts that they're already killing it. I'm sure these days every athletic department is. It's already there, so it makes a lot of sense to be in athletics. But is the biggest impediment to that just an attitude of, we don't know what it is and we're not entirely comfortable with it, or is it more sophisticated than that?
No, I think that's sort of it. There are so many stigmas around esports and sort of if it's a real sport or if it's real competition or if it's just people, sort of binging on a hobby. At our school, it's through the Student Affairs Office. We do have support from the athletic department. They're part of our Student Affairs, so we're able to meet with them and get guidance from them. The athlete in me would like it to be part of the athletic department, but I don't see it as a huge impediment to its growth. Because right now, I think what we're focused on is using esports as a way to engage the college population that otherwise wouldn't engage themselves in activities on campus, which is something Student Affairs has its hand in. I think that it's also, the focus is bringing in students that otherwise maybe wouldn't have come to our school in particular, maybe wouldn't have come to a school, which again, I think is more Student Affairs right now. I think that as esports develops, especially at the high school level, we can probably consider it more towards athletics because there will be that structure, especially when it comes to recruiting and sort of developing them through the high school program into a collegiate program where the demands will be, I guess, a lot more stringent than they are right now, because right now it's sort of a club atmosphere, at least until we really hammer down sort of the structure and the policy and how we want to shape what we want the organization to look like.
And to be fair to athletic departments, I think Title IX is an issue, and so they already have their manner of complying with Title IX, and there's really 3 different ways you can do it, and that's sketched out and very intentional. And so the prospect of just adding a sport or group of sports, it's not one sport, it's potentially tons of sports and many teams that is very male dominated. They got to figure that out. But Title IX would apply whether it's inside or outside the athletics department. It's just the athletic department would be responsible for the intercollegiate athletics Title IX numbers. At some point, wherever it's housed, someone's going to come in and say, okay, how are you complying? And it'd be interesting if they if the Office of Civil Rights, and I intentionally go into this area, but it's a fascinating area as someone with a legal background like myself. Would they view it just within student life, or would they view it as, would they look at the whole picture of all of the athletes and competitors in esports and lump them together and then see if you're complying with Title IX or not. That would be interesting.
I think it has to be grouped. The reason why is because the information that's being retained and sent back is grouped. It's about the school as a whole, as the top of the umbrella. So if you separate it, I mean, like you said, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
Well, yeah, you have to. But the one thing, if you are complying by saying you're accommodating the interests and abilities of the student population, which can some ways allow you to have a football team and more male participants than you have female teams, because you're saying, than female participants, because you're saying we're accommodating all the interests out there. Then presumably, if you open it up and said any man or woman on campus who wants to play esports with us, come on, then that might be a good way to comply with Title IX. But if you're doing it by the numbers, you're saying our numbers are proportional to the student body numbers, then you probably are already proportional. And if you add 25 male students, then you're going to be out of whack from a Title IX perspective. So that's just something I think about, and any athletic director or athletic department would think about as they consider whether to add esports within the athletic department. But we see no difference in terms of the competitiveness of the programs that are outside of athletics. We don't see that they're better or worse. We don't think it particularly matters whether they're inside of an athletic department or not, at least right now. Are there any benefits? Do you think it's short-sighted on the part of athletic departments? Do you think there's benefits of being inside that they're missing out on?
Not necessarily, I don't think so. I don't think that we would have any, I don't think our program would be shaping any differently if we were listed as in the athletics department versus in the student affairs department. I think it's getting the same exact attention that we would put into it anyway. I know that the way, the way our scholarships are going to work, it'll be similar to how the athletic scholarships work. So I don't think that there's any real difference other than sort of the, like you said, the housing and the titles that come with that.
Do you mind talking about your scholarships?
Sure. So the way we're doing our scholarships, our school gives them out based on percentages, or a percentage of your tuition. So while we won't have an esports full ride, at least not yet, we can give out our scholarships that can, I guess, supplemental to the financial aid they receive for academics. So if a student has 35% of their tuition covered through academic and financial aid, I can come in and add another 7.5% through the esports scholarship fund. And then, that could, of course, be determined based on things like their ability in the game, maybe other extracurriculars. Something that I look at, or something that I want to look at as I'm recruiting, I don't think that, as nice as having a great rank is for players, if the Grandmaster Overwatch player would be awesome for me to bring in. I think it's more important to look at people that are coachable, and people that are, going to be able to balance being a student first and a competitor, because I think that, esports is tough. I don't want to simplify it and say that the games are easy, but they're not physically demanding. So having people that are open to learning and sort of have the mindset that they want to improve. So I don't care if you're, a silver player or bronze player, whatever the low ranks are. If the mindset is there, those are the kinds of people that I kind of want to get on my team, because teaching the games is the easy part. It's having the mentality to grow. I think that are the people that deserve those scholarships.
So you're actively recruiting high school students? Yeah.
So
and how do you go about that?
Right. It's a little tricky right now because, to go back to sort of what we would do with traditional sports, if I were a football coach, I could go to a local high school and I could meet the quarterback, and I can reasonably assume that quarterback has had 10 years of organized football experience. With esports, I can meet, a great kid that's on his high school esports team that maybe just started 5 months ago.
Right.
And other than that, I don't know how much team experience he's had. I don't know, how he does under pressure. I don't know, and of course these are things that you wouldn't know with a traditional athlete, but you can sort of have those reasonable expectations with traditional athletes. So I think there's something the high school piece is missing right now. The lower levels of esports,
Right.
it's come from the top down. So for recruiting, what I look for, like I said, are people that can grow into a system, because it's going to be a lot. Since this is going to be a varsity program, the expectations are going to be much higher than just playing on the weekend, with your friends at 2 a.m. There's going to be grades to manage. There will be other extracurriculars to manage. There will be the team to manage. So it's been tricky in that regard to find the people that we think will fit into the system, because, we don't want to burn people out. We don't want to give people more than they can handle. To pursue playing esports. So, as we go forward, I hope it'll get easier, at least in that regard, as high schools start to build up their programs. The one nice thing about recruiting, though, is that since esports is predominantly based on the internet, there's a lot of attention that goes on the internet. There are a lot of sites that I can go on, so having a great social media presence and a lot of internet campaigns has helped us get attention from students in other states that maybe wouldn't have considered us to begin with.
And so do you go seek them, the ones that you like, or are you waiting for them to solicit interest on your part?
Right. So right now what I do is I sort of lay the net out and hope that people
Great.
fall into it. Because again, since there's no structure at the high school level, I don't know who those blue chip prospects are. I don't, with football and basketball, you can go on Rivals and see who the five-star players are, and you can target them. In this, it's a little trickier because people go by handles that they're not their real names. They play on the weekends, so I can't just, look up in a database to see who the best high school players are. So I've been doing a lot of internet to try to get them to come to me, and then I've been doing a lot of contact with high schools that have esports programs, and I've been trying to get out there to meet them, meet the teams, sort of learn about them as players and about as students, and hopefully, have them learn about the school as well.
And if I can plug Nerds for Gamers here, that's what Dan, I'd love to have you out at a National Championship Series event. That's, we're running 1,000 tournaments across the country in, about 24 cities that are, the goal there, it's open events for specifically not professionals, with the goal there being to be that IRL, that in real life, in-person LAN event competition where you can see the results, they can compete on that team, and a place where colleges can go to recruit, and not just have that leaderboard and that competitive history, but also see how those competitors act in person, right, which is really important.
Well, and I'm happy to collaborate with you, Danny, on an event designed for high school students who want to be seen and by potential colleges that they could then go play for. I think it'd be great. In the NCAA world, there's a lot of restrictions on a conference wouldn't be able to organize and be part of an event like that. But in esports, that's part of the reason we're doing esports, is because our schools are telling us they want to use it as a recruiting tool for students. So,
well, like New York Institute of Technology is on Long Island, where I'm from, and they opened their Overwatch team, and it has been it's like booming. It's a good school. And now it's booming. So, and a lot of the things I'm seeing from them is raw Facebook, Instagram, social media promotion, marketing. That's literally the most unlimited list tool that every person in the entire world has at their fingertips right now. The fact that you could literally put $100 into Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter and have it hit 115,000 people over the course of a week or 24 hours. I mean, people don't use it. It's insane. That's literally one of the most invaluable tools that you can have. And you can literally pull students, prospects from anywhere in the world just by doing stuff like that. And it takes the net that you have at your school and it literally quantifies it 100 times.
Right.
Yeah, and just to touch on that, the in-person events like we had up in Albany, I had parents throughout the whole weekend come up to me and say, oh, my son or my daughter is really good at Fortnite or Overwatch. Is there a school that we can go talk to? And I just pointed them, yeah, they're everywhere. Just go up and talk to them.
Yeah, it was not unlike any other sport that when, with the way I took my kids to sign up for soccer or baseball, we had our event in Albany. We had parents walking in with their kids and their kids running up to the Fortnite stage and just staring at it in awe. And but there's the ability to connect with these high schools that you can't really do in the NCAA that you're able to do with these sports.
It's just going to take time. Thousands of programs are opening every single year. High school, I commentated the high school all-star ladder for Paladins when I was working at High Res Studios, as well as the collegiate finals for both of those there. So the schools are there, they're coming. It's just a matter of time.
And this is one of the, a huge opportunity for the ECAC, for schools. When you have when a high schooler goes onto a collegiate campus, they're 10 times more likely to go to that school. So an esports tournament is a great way to bring high school competitors that want to compete in esports to your school. They're engaged, they're participating in esports, and you can see how they compete, and they're getting that recruiting experience.
I've been going to so many events over the years, and if I could tell you right now, if there was a college booth at any of these events, they'd be busy the entire time, no question about it. There's always product booth, right? Chair. Some people want to say stuff, take your money, always, but there's never really been, at least not yet, college recruitment booths or high school recruitment booths or whatever the case is. When that starts, that's going to change everything. So there are people just waiting. There's thousands at these tournaments. Yeah.
How important is it to start a program that's going to be good? I guess back to Danny, what you were saying about the goals of the program. I mean, and I saw it on the intercollegiate athletics side. There were some schools that had programs that were, and I'm not being judgmental about it. They're happy to have that program, but they're not going to invest much in it. Their coach isn't going to make a ton of money. They're not going to travel. They're not going to do much about. Certainly not going to buy any team to come in. How important is that? I mean, some of these schools that we see that are adding are just making an existing club. And is that okay, do you think, for overall esports, or is it important that they go all in with scholarships and coaches and some sort of a facility and all of that?
Personally, I would like every team to want to win, and it's just the competitor.
It doesn't shock me that you would say that.
But I think that just the fact that, as Paul said, it is slow and it is, it's coming. So just the fact that schools are getting involved at all, I think is a fantastic step. With my program in particular, we're going to try to be as competitive as we can. We do have the goals, of student retention, of student recruitment, and, engaging on-campus students that maybe haven't been engaged yet. So, we do have those primary goals with the added, competition factor. So we do want to be as competitive as possible because, ultimately it is going to be huge. So, getting out ahead and sort of establishing yourself as a school that's highly competitive already, I feel like is a big incentive to future recruits and development down the line.
I think if you're a director and you look at your overall school and you wind up saying to yourself, and you have funding for traditional sports, I think you'd be an absolute madman to not delve into esports, only because of how fast it's growing, how quick it's becoming soluble. I mean, we just had the Philadelphia Fusion open up their first ever arena that's dedicated to esports. Or is there athletics? Does anything else play there besides Overwatch at the Fusion Arena? I thought it was Esports Direct.
Not built yet.
Well, I know, it's not set
But
yet.
yeah, once it's built, there will be other events and programming.
Okay.
Besides the other.
Yeah, well, what I was just thinking is that, a lot of the time, as these more programs come into light, we're going to see a lot more just overall schools get involved. But when you see the numbers that your social media traction brings in, Twitch viewership brings in, you don't have to slice and dice it and make it raw, compete on an Overwatch team or nothing. You can now make the official school stream team, which every major team that's current in esports is doing. They're doing their streamers, their pro teams, their YouTubers. You can incorporate so many different aspects in the same exact umbrella, even if you are staying in esports. So you don't have to, I think you'd be crazy to not look into esports if you have any interest in overall community growth.
I think long term, there's a lot of reasons to want to have the most competitive team you can. Right now, a lot of schools are getting ramped up and doing their learning, and that's great, right? We want to increase the number of opportunities for students. Long term, you know, in a few years when having an esports team at a college isn't front page news, then it's going to be, okay, what separates your team from another team? And these colleges are going to be competing for the same recruits. And then additionally, you know, like Paul just said, there's the broadcast component, right? This is a very digital first sport, and there's a lot of opportunities for schools to establish themselves and to show off their program to the masses by creating that broadcast. And the better team you have, you know, not in all cases, but the better those numbers are going to be, and the more people are going to see it, and the more they're going to want to be on that team because of how competitive it is.
And the depth of your curriculum, you know, the depth of your curriculum when it goes to the point, like, it's pretty amazing that Caldwell's actually doing stuff as far as curriculum based.
Right.
But as that evolves, if you tell yourself, hey, I want to be in broadcasting, I don't want to be a pro gamer, like, I had that talk with myself, you know, somewhere down the line, I want to be in broadcasting, and I know Caldwell has an amazing broadcasting curriculum. That's going to drive me to go here. So you have so many between it, whether it's being a streamer, being a broadcaster, being on an on-air talent piece, head coach, gamer, whatever the case is, you have so much room for curriculum there. And the evolution of your school's curriculum is what's going to pull in more people, pull in more sponsors, pull in more everything. So you have to think about that going in.
And when you have a competitive team and you're winning and you're competing on a larger scale, and then you're getting those higher broadcast numbers and those larger sponsors because of it, and then not just the team recruits, but the caster recruits want to go cast for that team because it's one of the best teams in the country, you can see how it all builds.
Right. If you're advising a high school student, I mean, I go back to this notion, Paul, you're talking about, when you're picking a game, you want to pick a game that's going to be around in 10 years. If you're a high school student, you kind of have to pick a game, or do you pick a couple? I mean, because sometimes some of the games are pulling back or laying folks off, and let's face it, there's a lot of competition in the gaming community. There's going to be some games crowded out. There's going to be some games that people lose interest in. If you're a high school student and your game, you're so good at it, goes away. What advice would you give to somebody with that in mind? Should they be proficient in many of them? Should they be proficient in all the ones that you're going to be offering? Just talk about that, because if you're coming into college and you're a baseball player, well, you know, schools have cut baseball on. Yeah, in fact, it's happened all the time in intercollegiate athletics, wrestling programs have been cut everywhere, and it's not just the male-only sports. It's there's been so many financial problems that so many schools have gone through. You're always susceptible to having your sport cut, but talked about that. Is there a way to guard against that? Do you try to be proficient in many games, or?
I think that with esports, there are a lot of transferable skills. You know, if you're a baseball player, you know, there are probably a few skills that you could bring over to football or basketball, but in esports, you know, especially, you know, a great example would be Team Fortress 2, which was a game very similar to Overwatch, or Overwatch was very similar to Team Fortress 2, and that game sort of died out and Overwatch took its place. Those players can have all the skills necessary to sort of go to Overwatch, or, you know, so there isn't, I guess, that much of a barrier between a lot of the games. It's just sort of how you think. The physical motions are generally the same. But, you know, what I would tell a high school student is just not so much pick one game and stick with it, or really, you know, put all their eggs in different baskets. It really just, whatever they choose to do, number one, you have to enjoy it, and then number two, you know, just be open to learning, because I think that mental approach of being open to learning will help you if your game unfortunately does, you know, sort of leave the popularity, or you know, whatever goes out of vogue. So sort of just being open to learning and understanding that, you know, you do have transferable skills from game to game, I think is more important than just, you know, saying, you know, you need to be good at League of Legends if you want to be a good esports collegiate esports gamer. So I think that coaching a way of learning is a better piece of advice than coaching telling them which games to play.
How long would it take to get up to speed on a game to a point where you could participate for you guys? So let's say you're playing a game and it goes away.
Right.
And you start doing League of Legends. At what point might someone be proficient enough?
Sure. I think it also depends on how long you've been playing games at all. So, if someone's been really competitive in esports, throughout high school and maybe before, and their game goes away, picking up a new game probably, there will be that learning curve, but it won't be as difficult as if they're just starting. So it depends on their history in esports a little bit. But at least for our team, and one of the things I do really like about the ECAC is that we're able to enter as many teams as we want. So then we'll still be able to cater to people who maybe haven't developed those skills yet to transfer to a new game. But ultimately, I think that having a history in esports, or at least gaming, is important, and will probably be more important as the scene develops at the collegiate level, because again, that level of competition is going to keep rising and rising and rising as more and more people get involved. So I would say right now, it's probably not as important as it will be in 5-10 years.
It's more of an esport level also, a designer and a programmer question, to be honest, because game companies are not thinking about collegiate. They're thinking about making revenue, and they're thinking about how they're going to make bucks. So that's why we saw for so many throughout the 2000s, we saw just game company after game company coming out, sports titles we see year after year, fighting games like Injustice, Mortal Kombat. It's a rinse and repeat recycle of just getting new games out to make revenue, and there's no real thought of longevity. They don't care about the longevity, and that's a flaw because that's counterintuitive of what they're trying to do on a collegiate or a competitive esport level. Overwatch and CSGO and now League have been the three games that have really been 10-year games where it's like, all right, there's leagues, there's fan base, there's company ownership, and also involvement to where your game's going to be around for a long time. That needs to change overall, and because that's not the case right now. If you're a fighting game player, Smash Bros. Ultimate is on the circuit right now. Yeah, that game is more of a 10-year game for fighting games, but that's probably the only one. Fighting games are in and out every year, every 2 years max. So until companies, and it'll happen at some point, some company somewhere is going to go, I want to make a game that's going to be the next collegiate NBA, or that's what Overwatch is trying to do now. They're trying to make it that first ever or secondary esport that's like a baseball. Like, this is not going anywhere despite what happens to it. So once game developers come more onto those trains, it won't be as cut and dry as, Overwatch, League of Legends, Fortnite. And the problem even with them now is that, technically those are the biggest games right now. Doesn't mean anything. They could be gone tomorrow. Apex came up in literally a single day. Apex became a game, and now it's like a huge tournament game. So it's like, that's a part of the industry that is very disconnected from what we're trying to do here. So that's something that has to evolve as time goes on, hopefully with games like Overwatch and Fortnite and so on that are structuring more for tenure than anything else.
All right. Questions, anybody? Yes, you got.
We did talk about science. For esports, for ECAC, do you guys ever try to aim for EVO? Because recently EVO took out Smash Bros. Melee, and I was wondering if esports ever try to go to EVO, or it's just EVO a fighting tournament?
Yeah, it's fighting games.
It's just fighting.
It's just fighting games only. It's like the World Series of fighting games as a collective.
Okay, so and you guys are only focusing on Overwatch and League, right now for esports?
Fortnite.
No, we have 6.
6, yeah.
We have 6 games. League of Legends, FIFA, Fortnite, Hearthstone,
Super Smash.
Super Smash Brothers.
Overwatch.
Yeah.
Overwatch, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I didn't hear all that, so I apologize. But I was just asking if you ever guys aim for that. But then other than that, no, I don't have a question.
All right, we got. Okay, I need to repeat it for the feed.
Okay. With streaming being such a significant part of esports, and as it was mentioned earlier, schools are looking at recruitment, retention, revenue. How do you monitor at your institutions, or just sort of guide students in terms of representing your institution appropriately when they're streaming and they're representing your school?
Yeah, it's no different than having a job. It's no different than the price of admission for any job, period. You want to represent this school as a streamer, that's a massive responsibility. You're on camera, you're creating your own hours, you're doing your own stuff, and maybe as part of that, they wind up giving some, some scholarship. But yeah, you need to have your price of admission outlined very clearly of what it takes to be a streamer here at Caldwell or wherever the case may be. Maybe you can't stream past 10 o'clock. If we see that your stream on is past 10 o'clock, that's a hindrance to you or something like that. So you have to really just line out your rules of admission, stick by them, be strict with them, because in the end of the day, you're giving people a lot of responsibility. The entire internet has done that, given everyone a lot of responsibility. So you have to be really careful of your selection process and the rule set.
And you were talking about it earlier today on a different panel, the trash talk that happens by some of these folks.
Sure.
There's trash talk in every sport, by the way, but this is recorded.
Recorded.
And so you can go back and see it. Whereas in a basketball game, if you're getting a rebound and you're in the guy's ear,
Right. You don't.
no one's going to. They may hear it in the
right.
second row, but you can always deny it or whatever.
Right.
Here, you can't deny it if it's in the stream.
And that's why you need someone that's extremely responsible. Yeah, and this is a big responsibility that's going to come into schools to really pick and find people. And I'm sure as time goes on, just like anything, you'll see people botch it and so on. But you need to find people that are super responsible and willing to represent, someone that you're willing to let represent your entire infrastructure. You have to really be super wise with that choice.
Right.
Yeah.
Wait, was there a question over here? Yep.
It's not just colleges too, right? Tournament organizers and tournament operators also have their code of conducts, and we need to enforce it at all levels.
I was just going to ask about what do you think about like Tekken's model with having the season pass seem to try to extend the longevity of their fighting game? Do you think that's working, or is it just falling flat?
They copied it from the international and the Dota community. The Dota community has the most intelligent business model for esports that we've seen in any company ever. It's very simple. They create a pack of skins, just totally built off custom scratch from their own developers. They then sell that skin, telling the people that is the same thing as Tekken. They sell these skins in the season pass saying, hey, this money is going towards our esports scene. And Dota 2 raises 15 million. I think last year was 15 million. Anyway, they've been raising the biggest prize purse in esports since they started this business model of having a community-funded prize structure. And it has been absolutely astronomical, 15 million. And that's why we're seeing that with Tekken as well. It's stuff I've been preaching for years, companies to do that, because it's literally stuff that you're inventing, you're coding, you're making. You're now selling, the community is growing, and you're getting a prize purse that's based off your entire community's involvement, which is astronomical in every situation we've seen it in. Yeah.
I know budgets are always an issue when it comes to sports. I've coached college baseball. We have our own gaming team now at NJIT, which kind of fluctuates where we're going under athletics or under the student or academic component. Wouldn't it be beneficial for gamers per se to keep it away from intercollegiate athletics? Because now you can represent NJIT as a club. You can join, you can come to NJIT, Paul, and be sponsored and still represent us and collect your own money. Just like you're working. We're in college athletics, you couldn't do that. I couldn't play in a baseball field and slap a Toyota on the side of my sleeve. So why would esports want to become under the intercollegiate system?
You want a degree, and I'm sorry, that's all I'll say. I mean,
You could do both, though, couldn't you?
I mean, technically, if you did it in entrepreneurial status, yeah, you could do both. And that's the case that many people are doing now. We see a lot of streamers that are successful that are no more than 15, 16 years old, and they're making their own money, and they're not prioritizing the ECAC.
But I think what he might be saying is if it's in the athletic department and part of intercollegiate athletics, and then presumably the rules about amateurism that apply to the athletes would apply to these competitors as well. So that's what you're saying. And that's and when we were looking to enter this, when we decided that this might be worthwhile for the ECAC to get involved in esports, really a threshold question was, are we going to apply the traditional notions of amateurism that the NCAA applies? And we decided that no, we didn't think you could have a credible esports profile and say you can never have won $1,000 or $100 or whatever in any kind of esports competition, and you could never have endorsed any product or anything like that. We just decided no, and it's outside of it. It's separate and distinct from what we're doing on the intercollegiate side. We have a whole range of NCAA sports that we run championships for, ECAC championships and leagues and all, but our esports is structured differently and is structured to enable people to not be amateurs. And so we made that distinction. But some schools might, if the athletic department were overseeing it, might say no, and that, in fairness to all the athletic departments and athletic directors out there, that might be another reason they're opposed to this. And
Sure.
Because how do you tell one athlete here who's sitting next to one of your gamers, and it's okay for this one to have earned money
right.
and endorsed product perhaps, and this one not?
No, I think that's a flaw with the general sports. I've never been opposed. Just me personally, it's just my opinion.
Well, a lot of it, you're not alone. A lot of people are saying that, and there's some lawsuits going on right now.
I've just never been opposed to it. I don't understand. You're going to sell this guy's name, his face, and everything about him, and you're not going to cut him a cent. I mean, to me, I understand where they come from with that, but I think that's an old institution that honestly just needs to go. I've never been a fan of that, and that would, that's just me personally. How do you guys feel?
No, I agree. I
Yeah.
think that, especially, I guess, with traditional sports, it's pre-internet and
Right.
the exposure that you can get from playing esports. It's not uncommon, like you said, for a 15, 16-year-old to stream their Fortnite or stream Overwatch, and it's remarkably easy to donate money and I don't want to say you'll make a ton of money streaming, but it's really easy to get involved in sort of that
Right.
that area and that space to make money playing video games. So I agree that I think it's probably a better approach to allow those players in that have maybe some earning history in esports.
Right, yep.
We have an opportunity to learn from past mistakes here, right? And to not, we want to provide opportunities for our students, help build them into model citizens, and not take advantage of them.
Right. Yep. Other questions?
Mine's really quick. When you when you compete, right? Is it like exclusively PC?
No.
Okay, because you can use controllers, because I'm an Overwatch player, but I play on PS4. Never really been exposed to PC, and I really want to, but can't afford to. But you can always bring your controller over to PC and play that, right?
Yeah, and your game sense is going to translate over, right? Like your overall knowledge of the game, the characters, the movesets, what's coming out, what to expect. That's all going to translate over. It's really just the use of your peripheral that is different. Now, you are at a disadvantage playing on a controller on the PC. There's no question about it. You're at a disadvantage because your hand can't physically move the same space and distance your thumb can. So that's really where the disadvantage is. But you can still compete, and you would honestly, you could see a top player play on controller. We see that with Sonic Fox in fighting games. He's a controller player in game, and he wins championships in games that were considered only arcade stick games in the past. So that's just a peripheral thing. And granted, at some point, hopefully you make it over to PC. But even if you just practice with your controller, all your game sense is going to translate over, man. Yeah.
All right. Got another one here?
This might be mostly for Dan, but how do you manage university perceptions regarding the violence in games, particularly things like CSGO or even to the extent League of Legends? And have you found that, the other side of that is the sports games, though far less popular, have you found that your institution is preferred that you look at going that direction?
The College of St. Rose currently, we don't have a violence policy with the games yet. Right now, any game that's popular enough to be played, in the ECAC and on campus is something that we would consider playing. I do know of schools that sort of do have that policy, where they don't want guns featured, they don't want violence featured. And I can see both sides of the issue here. For me, as a gamer, I don't necessarily see the guns and the violence. I'm more looking at it as different abilities and different positioning. And, it's not, for me, it's not necessarily killing, it's more of like elimination, like in laser tag or something. But I can definitely sort of see like I said, both sides of the issue. I think that's a tougher area to navigate, and I think that it comes down to what each school, sort of what their values are and what they do value in their esports program.
And for the ECAC, we don't do first-person shooter games, and we look at all the games in terms of how they treat women, and either of those, either violence or misogyny of any kind would cause us not to want to get involved in the game. And so hasn't really been an issue. Nobody's pushed us on a game yet. Anyhow. But that's where we're at on it.
If games really want to, you can change that so easily. If you really want, you could take CS:GO and they could put out a patch to basically, when someone's shot, eliminate the blood spill. Like, you could do things like that. So if you truly want your esport to be and accepted in more levels, you can, drive your game towards that with programming. So.
All right. Other questions? Anything else you want to say before we call it quits here?
I just want to say I think it's really great and important that a big part of today was mental health. I think that's something that just needs to be discussed in every event, in every athletics department, and in colleges in general. So, thanks for having us. But
Oh, sure.
Absolutely.
I think that's really important.
Well, I really appreciate you folks being involved here, and like I said, this will have a life going on because it'll be rebroadcast on 11 Next, but also we'll link to it, and a lot of folks will link to this. So I really appreciate your time, and thank you for coming as well.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, I'm
All
looking
right.
forward to the ECAC. Also, just whatever's coming next for the ECAC, it's going to be a blast.
It's getting bigger and better every year.
That's
We're
right.
growing, we're growing.
That's right. I'm excited for it too.
Awesome.
Thanks for
Awesome.
coming out,
Okay,
guys.
thank you so much.
Thank you.